Hello and welcome to Undrafted, a Dynasty game theory podcast brought to you by the Undroppables. I am your host, Scott Belanger, a.k.a. Jax Falcone. You can find me on Twitter at Dino Game Theory. This is episode number 226. Let's roll. It's a great day to be great. If you know, you know. It is a very special week for me. We are rolling right up on the regular season. We're recording this Tuesday morning or Tuesday noon East Coast time. Morning here on the Best Coast, but of course I'm from the East Coast. What am I talking about? Best Coast. But we are ready to go. It's cut down day today. Already some cuts. We'll talk about all that and more with a guest that I have been tracking down for quite some time. A lot of feedback from many of my listeners saying that Mr. Ian Hartitz would be an awesome guest on this show. I would argue Ian Hartitz would be a good guest on any show, but I am super excited to be talking for the very first time in my life with Mr. Ian Hartitz. You can find Ian on Twitter at iHartitz. If you aren't following Ian on Twitter, the Twitter god, I bow down and take the knee to very few people in the Twitter streets, as I am the Twitter king, receipt king. I am on Twitter for all the right reasons. Mr. Ian Hartitz holds over me. Ian, welcome to the program.
Appreciate all the kind words, man. Great to be talking to you for sure. And, I know our mutual friend and, fantasy colleague, Nick Boterford, helped us set it up. So shout out Nick and shout out you, man. So yeah, it is funny. You mentioned receipts. When I was at the Fantasy Football Expo, great time hanging with a lot of people, but I gotta ask, some people thought I was the man secretly behind the Fantasy Receipts Twitter account. So had to show them my Twitter logins, and I can assure you all, I have iHartitz and MB Fantasy Life. That is it. So, unless I'm really pulling a fast one on you guys, not me. So keep the, search going.
Yeah, early on there was a huge thread by one of the other Twitter analysts or fantasy analysts. It was me. They had all these sort of like receipts and connections and timestamps, and it was like a detective had gone through and done this whole thing. And of course, I knew it wasn't me. Wink, wink. It might be me, but I knew it wasn't me. So I just kind of said, okay, I'm just going to take it. It's me. So I just started saying, "You got me," and people really believed it, and we played that out for a long period of time. I still think for sure there's people who do believe it's me, and I'm still playing the long prank on this one. But hey, whatever they think is good for them. But we did not come here to talk about the fantasy receipts, although they're also in the Twitter streets holding it down. We're talking about football, man, and cut down day is today, and already some surprises with the Deontay Johnson, which not really a surprise, but you know what I mean. I guess it's mildly surprising, as some people thought he might have a role there. But anything else stand out to you so far this morning?
Nothing too much going on. Unfortunately, my guy Laviska Shenault not making it in Buffalo. So just rip the Band-Aid off, change your position to RB, and let's see what happens there. Team Visca, never wrong, just a little bit early. So I'm more curious what's going to happen Friday afternoon, man. The NFL loves to do some of these not so great PR news dumps right before Labor Day weekend. So I was trying to think what could happen. And, we did get the Schefter podcast last week that was hinting that there could perhaps be a Rashee Rice settlement before we actually get to the end of September. So I wonder if there could be a Rice settlement, suspension. Quinshon Judkins, I believe it was Zach Jackson over at The Athletic. He was wondering if there could be a situation where Judkins is suspended sooner rather than later. Yes, you can still be suspended even if you're not actively signed to an NFL team. Shout out to Ben Gretsch for shooting along that little tidbit. And the only other thing would be that kind of weird ticket resale scandal that was going on, saying that allegedly it's going to be impacting a bunch of players. So I'd be very surprised if any meaningful names are going to be suspended for that. But again, it would seem very, NFL on brand if at 4:55 p.m. on Friday, we hear about all these big name players getting fined for selling their tickets, which honestly, man, like you guys get the free tickets and you got to try and mark them. I don't know about you, man, but I used to love going. I went to a bunch of UFC fights and concerts and all this. And like, man, just half the time I look at these prices now and man, it's just, I'm not paying $1,000 to go sit in the nosebleeds. So Super Bowl is one thing,
crazy.
but shame on those NFL players and shame on everyone else that's gotten all these tickets out of control, man. We're just trying to vibe out here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the true fans, literally, who would be the best to be in the house, can't afford to go. So that
Right.
has been happening more and more. And look, I get it; they're running a business; it's not a charity. But to some degree, I think the business could be better by having some awesome rabid fans. I can remember, when I first moved out to California in 2005, they still had the old. I guess it was the Oracle, wherever Golden State played. I get confused at the name. I think it was called the
Yeah.
Oracle, right? And that place. Dude, that place was silly fun. I went to go check out some, Celtics, Golden State Warrior games. I'm a Celtics fan, obviously being from the East Coast, and that place was rocking. And now it's a bit sterile. I mean, it's a great place to watch a game, but way, way sterile compared. So, I mean, the experience is so much better.
Oh yeah, it's just one of those things, man, where again, it's for nosebleeds and we're still talking four figures and all this stuff. So look, I understand they're running a business and everything, but for me, especially in like the UFC, I know Dana White used to always talk about like he didn't want to be like boxing and make every single event this like closeout sale, everything needs to go.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it's kind of become. So you know what? They're still making money hand over fist and good for them and everything. But I just wish that there was some sort of care and hey, maybe this middle class family can still get some tickets out there. So just gotta save up, I guess, and it is what it is. So
It is what it is. I don't know that there's a solution. If the two great minds of Jackson, Ian Hartitz can't figure it out right here, right now in this program, there is no solution. But let's move. Hey, I did notice one thing that I thought was pretty interesting, and especially in a dynasty setting. I'll get your opinion real quick. It's not a huge release for him. Trey Palmer was waived today. I just sort of took a look at that, like, the Tampa Bay Bucks sort of depth chart. And of course, Godwin hurt, McMillan hurt. We'll get to Egbuka later in the show. I promise. Obviously, I'll talk about my boy, and Mike Evans. And then after Egbuka and Mike Evans, there's not much there except for UN scored wide receiver model darling Tez
Tasmanian
Johnson.
devil. Yeah.
Tez, man. I think Tez is a legit slot weapon here and could actually see some meaningful targets for fantasy. Your thoughts?
People loved him until he ran a 4.51 instead of a 4.49. You know how it goes. So look, I know we're betting on an outlier here with the size and everything, but I do think, and we have kind of seen it come to fruition. Like there's, it's very different football in the year 2025 than it was even in 2009. Man, pull up one of those Steelers Ravens games when it was young Flacco battling with Big Ben. You're just seeing knockout shot after knockout shot, things that would get dudes thrown out these days. So no, man, as someone who again obviously bleeds scarlet and gray and go Buckeyes and everything, I watched a lot of Tez Johnson over these last 2 years at Oregon, and the dude's the sort of shifty slot that honestly could maybe be on display in that offense. So particularly with the Godwin suspension, because the one interesting thing, as awesome as Emeka Egbuka is going to be, I'm sure I personally thought he was going to be more of a just building into the Chris Godwin slot role, particularly with him out. Okay, so Egbuka can do both and everything. I'm not trying to say he's this one trick pony in the slot or anything like that, but especially with Godwin being out, I thought Egbuka would be the front runner for the slot, but 22 of his 29 preseason snaps actually did come out wide. So at that point, it would be between Tez Johnson and Sterling Shepard. Obviously, he and Baker still go way back. So I do think if Shepard is healthy for as long as he is, I mean, let's face it, he's been a good receiver. I would even argue underrated, just unfortunately one injury after another. So wouldn't necessarily think that Tez is going to have that full-time role in week one. But hey, man, I think if Shepard's out, like Tez is probably the next man up. So, hey, shifty slot maven out here, maybe adds a little juice in the return game, man. Hey, I'm with you, man. I have some of these 25, 30 roster spot dynasty teams. We can find a little place for Tez potentially.
He had me at that backflip, man. That thing was clean.
Ooh, that was
That was a clean backflip. So, hey, if you're going
to
be
Isaac Tesla's worm, though, man, that was fun.
Oh, that was a good worm. I mean, we used to do the worm in high school. I'm not going to lie to you. Not me personally, because obviously, look at me, but 6'4" white dude. But definitely, I had some homies, and we would just, they would just pull a worm in the middle of class, and that was kind of like the way to like disrupt class. And I remember this was back in the '60s, guys. No, not that long. Anyway, let's get to it. Houston Texans. Mixon felt like it was big news. People were reacting like it was big news. I felt like it was a foregone conclusion. I had been operating like Mixon was going to miss time regardless. The 4 weeks sort of seems like, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I don't know if you had a different take, but I'm more curious about what your thoughts are on the running backs behind him. I think winning this running back room could be a way, especially in Dynasty, where a lot of times you're scrambling, as you even pointed out earlier, you're scrambling at RB2s sometimes. What do you think? How do you think this plays out?
Yeah, man, I'm with you where it wasn't really on Mixon at any point while this whole thing was going on. I always say, man, there's a difference between assuming someone's injury prone and then actively already being injured. So it wasn't a
Right.
big enough discount for me, especially with shout out Dr. Jeff Mueller at JM Thrive PT on Twitter. I mean, he was saying that he just has some sources that the stuff they were telling him about their recovery, like Mixon was completely off his draft board. So again, people are trying to give Jeff crap for it. And look, I'm not saying that Jeff or anyone else with these, quote unquote sources are going to be right 100% of the time, but I appreciate going out there on a limb a little bit. Ricky the dog, the People's Insider, does it too. Like the Schefters and Rap Sheets of the world are so plugged in, obviously, but they don't share anything with us until 5 seconds before it's going to be released by the team anyway. So, really annoying to me. So, quit being so hard on some of these people actually trying to give us stuff well in advance when they happen to mistake it, because at least they are going out there on a limb, unlike these dudes actually being paid millions of dollars to allegedly feed us inside sources, and they never freaking do, Jack. So now that I'm done with that rant, yeah, man, Joe Mixon being out, I do think that, I'm more team Dame Pierce over Nick Chubb just in terms of average draft position right now. Dynasty land, obviously, setting up well for Woody Marks and everything. We'll see if they do, in fact, view him as a capable 3-down back, but, explosive pass catching talent. That is what we're looking for. I just think for this year, more than anything, the answer could very well be no. Overall, man. So it is a situation where PFF and ETR's Brandon Thorne, they both have this Texans O-line, while it is revamped, still ranked dead last in the league.
Yes,
CJ Stroud, Nick Haley. I mean, I just read an article from Steven Ruiz over at The Ringer, and he's fantastic. I always try to catch everything Steven does. And he was kind of going through the changes to this Texans offense. And basically the main thing made it sound like that CJ Stroud's going to have more freedom at the line of scrimmage, which is cool. But man, nothing has really changed meaningfully in this Texans offense other than Nick Haley coming over. And as much as you can say, oh, he had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay and he was working in New England, we're putting a lot of trust in this dude just play calling, completely turn the situation around. Not saying there aren't good and great play callers compared to really bad ones and everything, but man, this time last year, Bobby Slowick was, in head coaching job conversations. And then all of a sudden, unblocked pressures and stuff. I'm not saying Bobby did the best job last year, but now it's year one, at first, it was, CJ Stroud, Bobby Slowick doing this perfect marriage. Year two, it's oh, yeah, Stroud's fine. Everything that happened bad was Bobby's fault. It's like the Bears thing, too. All the good plays were Caleb Williams. All the bad plays were Shane Waldron, So I just think it's kind of interesting how we talk about these play callers sometime. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I tend to side more so with the Jimmies and Joes over the X's and O's. So, overall, Dame Pierce redraft just as a late round dart. I'm cool with it. Woody Marks would be the other guy. Just as great of a story as Nick Chubb would be, man, it is a situation where just so bad last year. And you can say he's another year removed from the knee injury, and you're right. He's also now got a broken foot he's returning from. So that kind of thing's always kind of tickled me a little bit, where it's oh, yeah, even Javonte Williams, maybe he just needed those extra 400 professional touches, man, to really get that knee feeling right again. Hopefully a defender just knocks it back into place. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I think also Nick Chubb on the wrong side of the dynasty curve as well in terms of age. Yeah. That being said, though, you and I can fully agree that if everything is healthy in this backfield, Nick Chubb is by far the alpha predator. But there's a lot of the things that you just mentioned: the foot, the knee, the age, attrition. Just the offensive line being terrible. Woody Marks, I'm not so sold on. I don't think he's a 3-down back. He was a volume pass catcher. I mean, his yards per route run for his career in college, despite having 261 career college receptions, his yards per route run was less than Rocket Sanders, just for the record. And and Bhayshul Tuten and DJ Giddens and plenty of other players. His yards per route run was 1.13 for his career. So not amazing when it came right down to it. As a matter of fact, he only averaged 5.9 yards per reception for his college career as well. Again, not that explosive. I think he was a little bit more of a compiler in that way. So again, I think he'll be trusted with the pass catching stuff, but he wasn't an explosive back really at any point. I'm a little bit nervous about Woody Marks being this sort of guy who can elevate to a number one chair. But with the shrapnel around him, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's still possible, as opportunity sometimes is given, not necessarily earned at the running back position.
I'm happy you brought up what he did with some of the opportunities, though, because I've heard people talk about Bhayshul Tuten and just completely ignore the fact that he only got 81 yards on 23 catches last year. Like, how is that possible? I ran, shout out StatHead, Pro Football References, like kind of season finder tool. They're always improving, and they got some college football search capabilities now. And I mean, that was, I believe, easily dead last. It might have been second to last among all these, qualified Division I running backs. So yeah, earning targets is a skill, and I get it. But man, just the way people kind of talk over you sometimes with equating targets per route run just as the be all end all for everything. Shout out to you again for adding a little bit of extra context to it. So yeah, I mean, again, Woody Marks is one of these situations where you want to buy him cheap. That's fine. I get it. But just again, in this Texans offense as a whole, man, just a situation I'm not exactly dying to get exposure to for the time being.
Yeah. And we are, a couple of days or moments away from things kind of shaking up, where there could be a release from one team where all of a sudden the lead back for the Houston Texans maybe isn't even on this roster yet, potentially.
Antonio Gibson, come on.
Let's go, baby.
Dozens of us still believe. Dozens.
Yes. Two of us are right here. What are the odds? What are the odds? Let's move. Oh, you mentioned the offensive line. One of my favorite, and one of the better wide receiver prospects in our wide receiver model this year was Jayden Higgins. There's been some, I'd say, just bad news in preseason. Not terrible, but let's just say this: not good news for Jayden Higgins so far. But I think that's probably to be expected. Christian Kirk, I felt like, was undervalued all offseason, as he's going to be playing alongside Nico Collins in 2 wide sets, it would appear, and then shifting to slot, maybe, I would assume, in 3 wide, and somebody playing out wide. I don't think it's going to start with Jayden Higgins. Is that kind of what you're hearing, and what are your thoughts about Jayden Higgins going forward?
Based on what we saw with those, ever important first team preseason snaps, it sounds like Xavier Hutchinson is going to be the guy. So look, I know people go overboard, like, try to say Brock Bowers is now a fade because of this 9 snap sample and all that madness, but it is more helpful than these ridiculous unofficial depth charts that like interns are putting together at the end of the day. So, again, like anything, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I do think, again, based on what we've heard from camp too, is that Xavier Hutchinson will be involved early. It's at least enough of a risk for Jayden Higgins where I would be looking for alternative early season plans. So now look, I believe Dane Brugler actually before the draft gave Higgins that Nico Collins comp. And you honestly, watch the guy play a little bit and can see it. That said, do think he could maybe, like Nico, need actually a few years of, just kind of route running polish before he's going to be this complete dog out there. So Jalen Noel, I thought, was someone who honestly could have been graded as a superior receiver. Texans obviously know more about football than me, and they disagreed. That's why they took him in round 2 and Noel in round 3 in the first place. But I think the bigger issue is, even if it is going to be Hutchinson being a little bit of a stumble roadblock there, I just think it's Christian Kirk is probably going to be the guy where he's going to be the slot in 3 wide receiver sets and then potentially bump out into 2 wide receiver sets as well. So he's only there for 1 year. I do think Higgins and Noel should be starting in 3 wide receiver sets as early as 2026. But just in the near term in Houston, man, again, it's a situation where I drafted so much Nico Collins this year. I mean, he is my second or third most drafted receiver overall, which is hard to do when he's going, at the end of round.
Exactly.
Like, I have gone out of my way for this dude, fully in on team Nico Collins. But otherwise, man, unless I'm trying to get, Stroud to stack him up, I haven't really gone out of my way for either of these guys.
Well, there's going to be some concerns with that offensive line. We'll see how they sort of operate around all that. My thought on Jayden Higgins is, I think at some point he'll probably be the third player in 3 wide receiver sets. I would certainly hope so by the end of the year. But if not, then we've got bigger problems with Jayden Higgins. I think if he can't, climb over Xavier, then that's probably a little bit of an indictment on him, at least this year, not in week 1. I'm okay with veteran deference in week 1. These guys, there's a lot to learn. And, people forget it's not just, all right, man, go play football, dude. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to know. everything is timing. Everything is so intricate that they need to know this stuff. And that's where, we're going to get to my boy soon, but Egbuka is just so special. But we're going to go
Hey,
to
lest we forget though. Lest we forget
yeah,
Xavier was the original
yeah,
wide receiver one from the Iowa State Cyclones. So look,
yes.
I get it.
No,
He's had
hey, no,
he's had
you got
his
to go one. You got to go one back to our boy,
he's
the
he's
tight
had his
end,
chances at the NFL level. Yeah, you're
Hakeem
spot
Butler.
on.
Hakeem Butler.
Hakeem,
That's the
unreal.
real
What a
OG.
time that was. So
Yes.
again, I hear what you're saying. Overall, that would be a bit of an indictment. But I do remember, one of the studies I used to do in the offseason was trying to find these 5-tool wide receiver prospects, just guys who, again, height, weight, speed, route running, and then kind of playmaking ability with the ball in their hands. And, it was one of those things where a lot of guys with the size and just size, honestly, just they wouldn't qualify. But Xavier Hutchinson, Romeo Dobbs, Nico Collins, I remember were 3 that actually did stick out that, again,
Yeah.
just that little study liked a little bit more than the rest of the NFL. So Hutch is interesting. So, I'm just saying, maybe we'll keep a candle on for Mr. Xavier Hutchinson here in the Hartitz household.
For sure. I think for me it's just more the draft capital, right? If they invested
Yeah.
in Jayden, you would think they want him to to be that. So
Yeah.
it could very well. I always say that like Bhayshul Tuten versus the guys who were drafted ahead of him. You kind of have to be better. Like you can't just be the same, otherwise they're going to play the sort of veteran deference. You have to earn it. Same thing with like Xavier, who was a 6th-round pick, versus Higgins, who's a 2nd-round pick. You would think they want Higgins to be there, so it's like they can't tie, right? They're the same. They're going to play Higgins. That's kind of the point. I actually like Xavier.
Where do you fall with Tuten? Because I think he's fine as this late round dart. I get it. It's a muddled backfield. Why not just take the cheapest guy? But man, the way some people talk about this dude, it's like I get it.
Yeah.
He's a fun size speed guy for sure. So is Isaac Arendo. So is a lot of these guys every single year. And I mean, it does kill me just how much we completely dismiss ETN and Bigsby from the equation. So I know it sounds like one of them is going to be traded, and that's great and all. Again, I've drafted plenty of Tuten, but like, quit showing me his yards after contact numbers from Virginia Tech when Tank Bigsby just had some of the best yards after contact numbers in the freaking NFL last year. You know what I'm saying? So it's just the way we use talent in some of these like conversations. It's like, and again, not that Tuten isn't talented, but I don't know, man. Like we just kind of we get rookie fever from January to April every year. Yes. It's like what Tank Bigsby did last year matters, man. And, we can talk about Tuten being a better pure prospect coming out or this or that, but it does kill me just how quickly we dismiss some of these incumbent veterans.
I'm not sure that Tuten is a better prospect than either of these guys when they were coming out. First of all, they both had better draft capital. I didn't really like Bigsby for a few reasons that have also surfaced in the NFL. The 12 total targets last year are one of them. I don't think that he's going to be trusted as a pass catcher. He did have a couple of, I can't remember. I'd have to look it up, but he had a season, I think, with 20 catches or something like that in college, did Bigsby, but they were all like, he had like a negative 2.2 ADOT. Like everything was basically just sort of dumped to him. So it wasn't like he was utilized as a pass catcher in college. ETN, on the other hand, look, this is where my chip is. My chip is on ETN because at the end of the day, you can say you like this rookie or that player, but I think for this year, for 2025, I like Tuten a lot. We were unearthing Tuten pre-draft. We were talking about Tuten, and then he gets the draft capital. Then everybody else hops on board, and I felt like I went from being pro Tuten to anti Tuten just based off of right. I don't hate players. I hate ADPs. Hail to the king, right?
Hey, amen. A wise man once said. But dude, with ETN, it is one of those things where, for my money's worth, again, just having watched a lot of college football over the years, the 2 guys that put the most fear in my heart as an Ohio State fan were Penn State Saquon Barkley and Clemson ETN. Man, now we really haven't seen that same version. I feel like at the NFL level, right. Obviously that Liz Frank took away his first year. That next season where he was basically putting up RB1 numbers on a lesser workload was cool and everything. Like he was good, but then honestly, the second year after that, he was still on RB1, but almost got there more so on just absurd volume more than anything. Yeah. So I will give ETN some slack. He had, this hamstring injury last year. I think it was a rib or a shoulder issue as well. So he was playing through some pain, but we haven't seen that same level of explosiveness. So hopefully he's healthy and ready to go, man, because I'm with you. Like if you just can take the best version of these guys, I mean, ETN was freaking dangerous, man. That was actually my comp for Travion Henderson coming out. It was like Clemson, Travis Etienne, which I mean as a massive compliment because that dude was a freaking game breaker out there. But
He's a
I
first
said
round
it and
pick.
people were like, oh, you hate Travion Henderson. I'm like, no, ETN was a freaking dog coming out of Clemson.
Yeah.
This dude
People
was, again,
are so
so
silly with this. They can't remember their takes. This is why fantasy receipts is very, very valuable. I
yeah.
will not. We haven't mentioned fantasy receipts now it's twice, but like it's true. Like to just have some ways of looking back. We're trying to preserve some of the things that we're doing, at Dynasty Underground as well. But anyway, Tuten, the reason that people love Tuten is because of the explosion. He had a 10% career 15-yard run rate at college. That was behind like RJ Harvey, who was number one, right there with Travion and Jarquez Hunter, basically third in the class, even ahead of Ashton Genty in that category. So Bhayshul had that. But, I kept asking the question. I asked your friend, um, uh, Thor Nystrom
Yeah.
about Bhayshul Tuten. I was like, hey, why is the PFF grade so bad? Because he had all these big plays, he had a lot of missed tackles forced, and the PFF grade was really bad. Two things came up. One was decision making, the other one was ball security. We've heard both of those complaints or those issues cited so far for him. That scares me because that means that it's going to be hard for him to command a big role in the offense if he's not trusted. Maybe a couple of splash plays, but until he cleans all that up, that Bhayshul Tuten that is, I think he's going to have a hard time sort of commanding the room, especially with two other highly drafted players in front of him.
Ball security, job security, as they say, man. So I do think it's a situation where that decision making, you hear guys like Matt Waldman kind of talk about the same thing. So yeah, at the end of the day, we do want these really athletic guys and everything. But I know my buddy Dwayne McFarland has run some stuff on the relative athletic score, and I know we can zero in on different things, but there really isn't a great correlation between that ultimately bringing up a lot, in the way of just fantasy excellence. Again, like Tuten, even in that score, man, like he was behind Rocket Sanders this last year. He was behind Judkins, behind something named Montrell Johnson Jr. So again, it's just we kind of craft these narratives and everything, but a lot of times it's also stuff where we almost ignore these dudes not testing at all in certain areas, which can tell you that they probably weren't going to be testing good in them in the first place. So, again, Tuten, fine as a later round guy, but it's just, it's one of these things where some people I feel like go so overboard. Maybe they just want to be that guy who, called out the soon to be a great prospect.
No doubt.
If you're right, and hey, guess what? If Tuten just balls out 1,500 yards this year, league winner, I will politely bow and say kudos. You guys were there before me. So Price is right enough, but man, just the way we talk about some of these dudes, I'm like, give me a break now.
Yeah, no question about it. And this show is going absolutely swimmingly. We're going to talk a little bit of Bears, I think, and Miss Odunze, I know, is listening in. So we're going to talk Bears right after this. Welcome back to the program. Ian Hartitz here with me. We're gonna talk about the Chicago Bears. Look, man, I think the Chicago Bears are like, I've never seen such polarizing opinions and discourse about a team that I can remember and I feel it though. I feel it. I have a couple of, Caleb Odunze stacks in Dynasty, I think 2 out of my 22 leagues. And I think I look at that and I go, oh my God, that could be awesome. And then I also look at it and go, I could be dead in 4 months. This is so bad. So like I really feel that sort of that sort of bipolar looking at the Chicago Bears. I'll ask it simply. Does Caleb get there this year, and does he take Rome with him?
I had Rome in one dynasty team, and I traded him as like the central piece to get Bowers, which I felt really good about. It wasn't tight end premium, to be fair. I had to give up like a late first, but I was cool with that just because, again, it's one of these situations where I get him coming out as a prospect, and I thought he was awesome. So, not saying that he couldn't still be great, but you do look at these guys who had as bad of a rookie year as Rome did last year, and like, it's not great, man. And we can go ahead and say that, well, he was battling for targets with Keenan and DJ Moore and this and that. But, it is funny to me, like just how because of that, even though Rome didn't have that many fewer targets than Marvin Harrison Jr., I feel like their rookie years are kind of talked about much, much differently. So Marv's still obviously going earlier in drafts. So It doesn't completely confuse people there, but I just wouldn't get too far ahead of our skis here. Caleb last year, I think, was the QB 20 in fantasy points per game. Not good, but we did see him almost rack up 500 rushing yards, 0 touchdowns on the ground. So you would just like to think the regression guys will help us out there a little bit. But, folks hoping for that 4,200 pass yard, 500 rush yards, ceiling to pop. Maybe we're a year away from that still. So that would just be my concern, where, again, long term, I still do think Caleb is special enough to warrant the generational label, if you will, even though the first year wasn't ideal. And, I talked before about kind of jokingly how, again, good plays are, oh, look how great Caleb is. Bad plays are, oh my God, Shane Waldron, why can't you do something else here? I mean, there was, again, that stretch before their bye where they had won 3 straight games. I know it was like Panthers, Jags, and Rams, so it wasn't the toughest defenses in the world, but man, the offense was humming. And that is kind of what I'm falling back on. We had those games. We had honestly the 2 Vikings performances where Caleb really did look good out there. And the one thing, man, that just, again, with these quarterbacks, like when you are like Caleb and you have the arm talent, you have the athleticism, you force defenses to defend every single blade of grass on the football field, for better or for worse. Kind of like, early career Josh Allen, even before he became a great NFL quarterback, he still struck the fear into defenses because of just how much he made them account for. So like Josh Allen, I think Caleb's a little bit more further along, obviously, but I wouldn't be shocked if it does take until year 3 versus year 2 to get that true MVP level boom potentially. So I'm still high on Caleb. I've taken him quite a bit there in kind of the round 4 or 5 range, some super flex drafts. I traded a lot to get him last year at number 1 in one of my dynasty leagues. So still supporting. We'll say, again, not the best rookie season. Would have been a lot cooler if it was better, but I'm saying more of a 2026 thing with a nice improvement this year.
Yeah, I think I see this Caleb situation as like, there, you're right. People will say the good was on him, the bad was on Waldron. There was a lot of bad with Waldron. There were plays I would watch, and there would be like 2 guys running to the exact same spot. I'm like, how can that? In the NFL, how can 2 wide receivers run to the same spot? That it just can't happen. I mean, something broke down. That's not in the playbook. That's not a scheme that works in the NFL. Hey, just both you guys run right here and look for the ball. That's just not it. So, you see some of that stuff. You see, just like you say, missed blocks. Now, some of that could be on the quarterback. But what I know is on the quarterback is the sort of the retreating and trying to make a play in the NFL, where all of a sudden now all the edges, all the backers, all the defensive tackles some of them can chase you down at this level.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen at the college level. So I think some of these guys, we're seeing it even in preseason with Shador, where he tends to retreat a lot and try and make these big plays.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the tools. That's like the main problem
exactly.
there. At least Caleb can throw these wild arm angles, left or right, like Shador. And that was always the issue with him. I mean, I thought Shador coming out was like, I think one of my comps was like, if you took all the best parts of like Gardner Minshew and Sam Howell and put them together, and then Courage the Cowardly Dog was another one. So again, Shador, like that was the whole issue there. It was like, we didn't have size, speed, or arm strength. So like, you better be just the smartest quarterback ever. Otherwise, man, it's going to be tough for you.
But I guess what I'm getting at here is some of these tendencies are either like you learn to change them, or you're stubborn and you go down with the ship. And I feel like, I just think of it like for myself. If I was one of these quarterbacks, I'd be like, all right, I want to watch every bit of film and I want to see what I should be doing so that when I see it again, I'm going to do it better next time. And like, I'm just going to be better. You're a human processing computer that has to be like, what's my best decision on every single play? Optimizing every single situation, getting the most I can, taking the profit where there is. Like, it's so clear that has to be the mindset of an NFL quarterback. I have no idea the mindset of all these different guys. Like, that's the one thing you wonder. I just think if Caleb can figure it out, I think he has the ceiling that you're talking about. But you're a little dubious. Mrs. Odunze is often on my program there, the Dynasty Underground. We have her there. She's always defending her little Rome. Now, what I would say is, are you saying that even if Caleb gets there, you're a little dubious on whether Rome gonna get there?
Well, I don't want to insult Mama Odunze now. I remember Mama Deshaun Jackson was always patrolling the Twitter streets, sticking up for her boy too. So shout out, obviously raised an incredibly successful and talented young man.
We
and
love
everything.
Rome.
I will say with Rome, man, like I look back at some of his numbers last year, there are things that stick out. I know Fantasy Points has really good stuff on uncatchable target rates and kind of the unrealized air yards that go with it. And he pops in terms of just having some of the most available opportunity that wasn't even given a chance to catch it. But But I'm just saying, man, based on what I was seeing last year, it wasn't like it was just constantly, oh, there's Rome with 5 yards of separation
Yeah.
and Caleb put it in the front row of the stands again. It did seem like,
Right.
yeah, he got a lot of targets that weren't overly catchable, but, they were just going to kind of be these 50-50 contested catch situations, best case scenario, because he didn't have a ton of separation. So again, I think our eyes sometimes, or our minds sometimes can like confuse our eyes. There's some better way of saying that. But this freaking game against the Chiefs, bro, he ran like a flag route and they just let him run past because it was zone coverage and the linebacker didn't carry him. And everyone's going Rome Odunze, wide receiver 1. I told you so on a completely unguarded 30-yard gain. So again, it is legal for these guys to improve as they
Yeah.
continue going on. And you would like to think that he could take a JSN-esque second-year leap without, unrestrained from the shackles of the Shane Waldron offense and everything. So again, the path is there. And I do think just based on what we've heard out of camp, it sounds like Rome could be the wide receiver 1. So I've been buying him in redraft as, that wide receiver 3. I love that entire tier of guys, just the Calvin Ridleys, even Debo, Travis Hunters of the world, all kind of going in that range. Like rounds 5 through 9, your redraft land guys. Like that is really when I want all the wide receiver bullets possible. It's just, wanted a little bit more out of Rome last year. But at the same time, similar to Caleb, man, we got to remember these are young 20-somethings. And, even someone like Rome, who was a little bit older coming out, I mean, who's to say he couldn't improve a little bit in year 2. So honestly, a lot of that is why I'm trusting on Keon Coleman a little bit, which I know people have already decided, oh, Keon, look at him last year. He sucks at football. Why do you like someone who sucks at football? Because most 21-year-olds aren't even playing in the NFL, let alone at least flashing a little bit. So Rome, again, a little bit older, but still only 23 years old. Who say he's not going to be a baller?
So for me, when I see Rome, a lot of times I sort of categorize these outside X guys, and people will mention, especially Trav, who we affectionately call Miss Odunze because he loves him so much. But Trav will always say, look, he played 35% slot last year, so he's not only an outside player. But I think when I categorize these outside X guys that I'm a little bit dubious of in fantasy, look, Marvin Harrison is a great player. I don't doubt it, but he did not get us there in fantasy last year. Same thing with Odunze. Odunze, despite his sort of slot splits of 35% in the slot, his ADOT last year was 14.2. Look, that's too far down the field to really be the queen chess piece, right? You want to see that a lot closer to 10 or 12, right? These guys who get 4, 5, 6 ADOTs are, really just gimmicky, close to the line of script, Wan'Dale Robinson types, maybe a little bit of value in PPR, but not really going to get there all the way either. But you want those guys right in the middle who are seeing some deeper shots, but are getting all the intermediate, getting some easy chances. I think you got to give Rome some easy chances. If he's going to be another 14, 15 ADOT player, I think it's going to be the same thing again, in 25 as it was in 2024.
You buying Burden or Loveland then? Loveland's someone, man. I've got 5 dynasty teams and Loveland's on 3 of them. I think Bowers on the other 2. So had some scary tight end rooms there for a little bit and trying to just shore up that position, hopefully compete. But I feel like with Loveland, man, him coming into this offense, just having the profile he did and just completely dominating targets out of school like Michigan, with all due respect, the Harold Fannons of the world, that goes a little bit further for me when you are doing at a program such as that. So I know they haven't had a ton of wide receiver talent outside of Roman Wilson on the squad in recent years either. But Colson Loveland for me, man, like that long term is the chip that I really want here among these Bears receivers.
Interesting. I was going to ask that too. Like, do you think you said long term? Do you think Colson Loveland gets boxed out in 2025, or do you think he actually is like top 15-ish tight end finish in 2025?
I think it's a little more possible than people will give it credit to. I've seen some, the skeleton key of these drafts and all this. I remember I was on and I love the CBS guys, but we were talking about sleepers and I brought up the potential for Cole Kmet to, make things annoying. And I got hit with we're playing for December, we don't care about September. I'm like, well, all right. So we can just calm any usage concern questions with that. Like that's how we're going to be doing this. So again, that annoys me sometimes because we've seen it happen, bro.
Hey, Ian, I would say it's a lot like the Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid
100%.
situation, right? Where we love Kincaid. He was a first round pick. Josh Allen's safety blank. I mean, just remember the dialogue going into the narrative going into his rookie year was unbelievable. Kincaid. I mean, he's going to see 150. I mean, you heard it all. There was no concern of Dawson Knox. So bringing up a little bit of Cole Kmet might be a better blocker and is going to get on the field a lot. And maybe, Loveland only sees, 50 to 60% snap share and can't really get there because of that. No, that's way too, wise a thinking, I think, for most people who just want to have the hopium of, Loveland's going to somehow play, 80, 90% of the snaps and see, I mean, the target share is just hard to get there too with DJ Moore, Odunze, everybody else that's on the team, running backs. I mean, somewhere something's got to give, and I just don't know where it's going to give. That's what I'm wondering. And it could be, look, Loveland could be the one that I'm saying. It could be 80, 90%, and he's the man. That's possible, but that's going to be at someone else's expense.
Some of the first team preseason stuff, I think he was on over 70% routes for Caleb, which would be awesome if we're already there. But yeah, right. Cole Kmet's one of 7 tight ends on a contract worth at least $50 million. I understand Ben Johnson didn't sign that contract, but guess what? Ryan Poles is still the one that's there anyway. Right. So apparently they also called Cole Kmet like immediately after making the Colson Loveland pick. So yeah, maybe the answer is they're just running more 2 tight end sets and this and that, and Loveland's always going to be on the field. But I'm with you, man. It's a situation where if Loveland's obviously going to be the lead guy, but hey, if he gets 80 targets instead of 110, that's the difference between being a borderline tight end one and being this league breaker that a lot of people want him to be. So again, I've kind of, I've had this interesting just kind of back and forth where I do believe I want Loveland on my dynasty teams long term, but I want Tyler Warren on my redraft teams this year just because I think the targets are going to win out a bit easier in Indianapolis.
I 100% agree with that take, 100%. And I'm not saying it can't happen for Loveland in year one. I'm just saying that the probability of it is much lower than it is for Warren. 1,000% I agree with you. Yeah. So great take. Hey, real quick, Raiders. Amari Cooper. Jacoby goes out and, says, hey, man, I want to be traded. They come right back. The Raiders are like, oh, yeah, we're signing Amari Cooper.
I know, right? I thought, didn't even know Mark. It's like the, Major League back in the day. Like half these guys are past their prime. Half these guys never had a prime. This guy's dead out here. So we had not heard a thing from Amari Cooper, man. I go back to, Team Fantasy Life's fearless leader, Matthew Berry, shout out. He basically, one of his favorite columns he does every year, or my favorite columns of his every year, is the most interesting things he heard at the Combine, piece he publishes in March. And that sentiment was basically like NFL teams just believe that Cooper really was at this point washed. So he still made a couple cool contested catches last year. Maybe that wrist issue he was dealing with or whatever it was in Buffalo had a bigger deal. But man, for it to take this long and then for him not to get really much cash to begin with, I am very skeptical that it's going to be much of anything. So could be a bit of a progress stopper for guys like Deontay Thornton, and everything. But I do tend to think Jacoby Myers, man, go get your money. I get it. But did you have to wait a week before the season? I just feel like he's not going to be helping his cause there. And the way they kind of set up for players, man, if he sits out, he's just not really going to be getting his money. So always love me some Jacoby, but peculiar timing there, if you will. For me, again, Amari just makes me a little bit less likely to throw that late round dart at Tucker, or Thornton, or even Besh. But in terms of long-term thinking with these guys, like I wouldn't be changing your opinion on them based on the Cooper signing.
And Jacoby, I mean, the interesting thing with Jacoby, when I heard the news, I was like, wait, why is he doing this? Like, I'm like, it's got to be money. But then I looked at the money. He's in the last year of his contract, and he's slated to be, I mean, almost certainly the number 2 target on a team that has very, very little target competition behind the number 2. It's not like there's even a question. Right. He could have a gigantic year. He could, he could go out and earn a contract. I mean, then he's a free agent. I mean, he could really, maybe get himself maybe a short term, but nonetheless a very lucrative contract going forward.
And the way people talk about Jacoby, it's always annoying. It's like, yeah, he's been a wide receiver too in back-to-back years. And they're like, oh, that's our ceiling here. It's like, I don't know if it is. Look at the quarterbacks he did it with. Like, again, maybe it's just because he didn't score enough touchdowns early in his career, but he did that too, man, playing second banana to Devontae Adams and then having Brock Bowers there. Like, again, I watched Jacoby Myers. I think he's a fantastic route runner. Devontae Adams said as much. And, we had that cool conversation between him and Bob Kraft. And Kraft was even like, yeah, we never should have let him get out the room. They gave that money to Juju and Kendrick Bourne instead.
Unbelievable.
So, very interesting Patriots wide receiver management here for the better part of the last decade. So, again, I hope Jacoby's out there.
They're getting it right now with Efton Chisholm, so don't worry. It's all fixed now. We got it all
The
fixed up. Don't
great
worry.
Efton
Yeah,
Chisholm. Let's go.
that's right. The third too, by the way. I mean, he's Efton
Of
Chisholm the
course.
third. So don't get it twisted. There's a long lineage of Efton Chisholm. But yeah, I'm with you 1,000%. Okay, we're gonna go to a couple of my guys. I've been Jackson Dart for a couple years now. I feel like Jackson Dart was overlooked for much of this whole process, like for years. And then, it's like, oh, he's going to be a first round pick. There were so many people coming out and like just really slandering him, like as if, oh, this is a gimmicky guy who can't even. And I never saw that. I mean, I do understand the offense at Ole Miss was a little gimmicky. I saw that, but you didn't see him as a gimmicky releaser of the football and processor. It was like, dude, this guy's legit, and he's pretty stout. He's got an NFL body, NFL arm. When you watch the Trey Harris highlight film, it's really a Jackson Dart highlight film. So you're like, wait, this kid can really sling it. Now he goes to the Giants, he gets Malik Neighbors, and then he goes out and has, in my opinion, the best preseason of anybody in the NFL. I mean, I thought he was the most impressive decision making, checking in his first game to a touchdown to Lil Jordan Humphrey and single high.
Yeah.
Like everything was just sort of like, wow, okay, great, check. The way that he escapes, I've been mentioning, is a lot like that Bo Nix, where unlike Caleb Williams, who retreats back and tries to get off the edge, he just goes right up the middle, finds a little seam, takes what he can get. Those rushes are so devastating to the defense. I feel like he's got this rushing upside that Bo Nix possesses. I'm in. And first question, I guess, is, are you in? And if so, or if not, do you think this preseason and this hype gets him on the field sooner than anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, the schedule too. I think week 5 is
Schedule's rough.
probably
Yeah,
about the earliest though, because I mean I just think the situation where Brian Dable's season hot, like it's actively on fire right now. So I do
yeah,
think if they start off even 1-3, that might be enough, to get Dart there. Week 7 would be the next point because they're home in week 6. It's Thursday night though, primetime game against the Eagles. So if they just get the doors blown off them and now they're 1-5 or something like that, would be the time where you have the extra couple of days after Thursday. You can get Dart ready to go. I guess in the mile high for his first career start, which isn't ideal. But again, there's really no just ideal patches unless you want to wait all the way until week 15 after their bye. Tough to think that, again, if things aren't going well, Dable's even still going to be around at that point. So I hear you. I mean, with Dart, my comps for him coming out were Gen Z, Alex Smith, non-ginger, Andy Dalton, poor man's Jalen Hurts. And I might have not even given enough credit, though. I don't think those are, mean-spirited comps or anything like that.
no,
But
it's
it's
great,
just,
actually. I like it.
yeah, and he has the mobility. Like, again, I know most people maybe have only remember Alex Smith like post leg surgery and stuff, but that dude could scoot early on. And
Yeah,
for me, it was just more so where when things aren't perfect, that's when kind of Dart, I think, that's why I have my questions. And a lot of that is the Ole Miss offense. So, but we've seen that with CJ Stroud as well with Ohio State. Like, I think sometimes these guys, we mistake their inability to create off script more so with them not needing to for large portions of their collegiate career. Because again, you mentioned Trey Harris and just, man, like the amount, if you guys have watched Ole Miss games over the last few years, like Lane's throwing his freaking clipboard up in the air because he knows he's got a touchdown like every other drive out there. So, man, it's all fall in love with Elijah Moore and, all these guys even post AJB and Metcalf. So again, the offense is a little bit wonky. I get that. But some of the things
yes,
you mentioned, the arm strength, especially when he knows where to go, the football really pops out. And then just having that mobility. So Jayden Daniels is someone where I remember one of the stats I had where it was weird because like I thought he read the field very well, but like once pressure came, it seemed like he'd just kind of take off and run. And he was fast enough to get away from everyone in college. And oh shit, he's also fast enough to get away from pretty much anyone at the NFL. But like again, it's that playmaking ability where I think I've come around a little bit talking about how obviously Caleb hasn't, he puts it on film more, but like if you do have the size, arm strength, and the speed like Dart, like obviously Jayden Daniels to an even higher degree, I don't want to bet against these guys not having that tool in their, bag at the NFL level, just because they haven't shown a ton, because they're being put in a great offense to begin with. So with Dart, man, just the fact I got him on 1 or 2 dynasty teams because, man, like just being ignored and shoved into the second round of some of these drafts. Like I understand if you wanted to take the day 1 and day 2 running backs and then maybe, the day 1 wide receivers ahead of him. But man, Colston Loveland's someone that would routinely slide into the back parts of round 1. I even got him the first pick or 2 of round 2 once upon a time. And just just with Dart, man, like look at some of these quarterbacks like Sam Darnold and just you get so many chances, second chances, even
Yeah,
Carson Wentz, bro. And Marcus Mariota got a full year in Atlanta, like at one point to go try to rekindle his career. So with
right.
Dart, it's just like one of these situations where you're going to get a long, long leash for that value to potentially just keep on going up. So I'm cool with Dart, and I hope it works out, man. He's just fun too, man. He's got the eye black on in honor of Anakin Skywalker. Like how can you
Yes.
not root for that guy?
Yes, I'm with you. Right. I mean, as we say on Dynasty Underground, his name is fucking Dart, bro.
Right? Come
So
on.
you know, right? That's all you need to know. I mean, did you hear? I was watching NFL Network. Did you hear his brother is in high school and his name is Diesel?
Really? Like real name?
That's that's what I heard on
Diesel
NFL
Dart.
Network. Diesel Dart. I was like, okay, I'm all in. I mean, no offense to the Dart family, but I also got a good look at his mom. This is an all in situation. I mean, you see stuff like this, you can't ignore it. Yeah, the
Oh
mom
my
is
God.
a 9 out of 10. The brother's name is Diesel. His name is Dart. It's Jack. I mean, it's just everything here lines up. Um, and I've always said while you look that up, because this is definitely a very important data point, I think. But I always say like these quarterbacks tend to be, it's what we were talking about earlier, what I mentioned earlier. It's like, can these guys actually figure it out? Are they able to sort of, make an adjustment, long-term adjustment, short-term adjustment, everything, like just continuously be getting better. One thing that Jackson Dart did do is if you look at his college career, every single year completion percentage went up. Every single year yards per attempt went up. Every single year touchdown rate went up. Every single year interception rate went down. Like he is an improving player. I think he's going to improve at the NFL level. I think he's the type of player that can figure it out. But did you confirm the lineage here? Is it Diesel for sure?
Amazing. It is, in fact, Diesel Dart. Apparently, he's probably got some good highlights too that people were hyped about. But yeah, man, I do like. I'm just looking at it. I don't have the exact qualifiers, but remember that like Bill Parcells kind of QB checklist that he
Yes.
wanted for his guys. Like Dart might be one of those that does check pretty much all those boxes in terms of showing that improvement, getting X number of wins, and just being able to be accurate enough. So I get it, man. I just think that system is really what's been curbing too many people's minds, and it can be tough to evaluate. So maybe that's you watch Tennessee games and stuff, and some of these running backs running against 4-man boxes. So that certainly is part of it. But man, maybe throwing for 330 yards per game in the SEC is also good. What about that?
Yeah. I do have, the anatomy that I do every single year, which is basically similar to, what Bill Parcells was saying. And one of them was, he had, I think 30 starts or whatever, which is great. Yeah. You want to play, but I just look at college attempts, right? And so he had 1,300 college attempts. That puts him right with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. Jayden Daniels all had that type of college attempts. You really want to see something over 1,000. Bo Nix was 1,900 college attempts. But we have a little quarterback model that we haven't really shared with the public, but that quarterback model put Jackson Dart right with Patrick Mahomes and Bo Nix right in that ballpark as a prospect. His completion percentage was 65% for his career, 69%. Nice for his best season. He was 9.2 yards per attempt for his career. His best was 10.8. Interception percentage was a little high. It was 2.1. But again, I mentioned that it did get better and better each year. By the way, someone else had 2.1 was Patrick Mahomes at a 2.1% interception rate for his career. You'd like to see it just below 2. So yeah, all that stuff is his best season passing yards, 4,200. Best total touchdowns, 35. Like everything you look at, rushing yards, 614, his best. That puts him right next to guys like Bo Nix and Drake May. So I do think that when you look at his profile, it shows that he has everything it takes to be a NFL player. First round pick now too.
Did in fantasy, you brought up the rushing. I mean, for him to actually put up those numbers, even including the sacks, obviously that were taken away from rushing yards in college. I mean, I think it was 400 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns on ground. per year at Ole Miss. And we already saw that in the preseason, man. I think he had 52 rushing yards in his score as well. So, again, not everyone's going to be Jaden Daniels or Lamar Jackson on the ground. But, hey, we saw Bo Nix last year put forward the fifth best rookie season ever in terms of fantasy points per game. A big part was because of, again, the 400-plus rushing yards. And I think he scooted in 4 or 5 times. So, Caleb's got that in his bag. Early career Dak Prescott had that more so in his bag. So, again, that's the big thing for Dart, too. He just profiles really nice for fantasy, where even if he does have some growing pains, because he is a young prospect and everything, still as a real life quarterback, I mean, he could be in a situation where I know at the very end of some of my redrafts I was doing earlier in August, Anthony Richardson was that wild card, just putting the chip on in round 18, because it's like, well, he might suck in real life. I get it. But in fantasy, we're playing this game with these rules. He can be all right. Dart would be that guy for me now, because I do think he's on the field by week 7 at the latest.
Yeah, that the Anthony Richardson take is true. It's like Anthony Richardson probably sucks, but if and when he is announced as the starter, he's a top 12 quarterback play that week. You know what I mean? In fantasy. So, right. That's just how that works.
Taysom Hill was a QB1 for us for 4 weeks playing quarterback. Tim Tebow was a QB1 in fantasy. Like, think of the worst quarterback and if they run enough, it'll work out.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, my arm is getting tired from patting myself on the back, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Emeka Egbuka, talking right up your alley, dude. I've been saying that I think Emeka Egbuka was in the tier 1 of this class, right with Travis Hunter and Tet. I've called him my wide receiver 1 in this 2025 class, maybe somewhat non-ironically, but certainly a little hot takey. But I think it's close enough. I'm right there with him. In other words, if they were all going in the same ADP, I would have probably split those assets, and I would have taken, some Egbuka, some Tet. As it were, I've got 0 Tet and a ton of Egbuka because of the value in that situation. I'm sitting on, I think, 50% rostership in Dynasty, which is feeling really good. I absolutely love Egbuka. Now he's steamed up. He's a top 20 wide receiver in Dynasty, according to sources like Keep Trade Cut and whatnot. Actually, I think he's at like 17 or 16 right now. He's steamy. Is it okay for me to victory lap already without him having even played a game, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, you got him a good value relative to now. So, feel free to, take a page out of the Bill Croskey-Merritt Truthers book and go ahead and just victory lap that. Sure. But I will say for Egbuka, he's running so hot now with the Godwin being out at least the first 4 weeks, McMillan being out until week 9. Like, I did think there was some potential there in an offense where you're losing your, wonderkind play caller. And Baker Mayfield is a little bit poised for regression, where I thought Emeka could be, this year's kind of JSN, Rome Odunze, the number 3 pass game option in his offense. But now, given these injuries, bro, like just from a full volume projection standpoint, I think Egbuka deserves to be right in that this year wide receiver 3 mix. And obviously Dynasty giving him the benefit of the doubt makes sense too. That said, and I think I have a weird, and Ohio State fans I'm sure can relate to this, like the embarrassment of riches in these wide receiver rooms. I don't want to hold it against Egbuka that I don't think he's been a top 5 Ohio State wide receiver in the last 4 or 5 years, but I think that's the case, man. For me, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jack Smith and Jigba, Jeremiah Smith, I think all those guys have been better than Emeka Egbuka. And that shouldn't be a shame because those guys are all really, really freaking good. And Jeremiah Smith might as well be the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty right now, even though he's still got 2 more years down here in Columbus. But I guess for me with Egbuka, man, I feel like, if we were kind of playing backyard football, and they just have like the real basic 4 or 5 categories, for each player and stuff, like Emeka is probably a 6 or 7 out of 10 and like everything, which is fine. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who Baker Mayfield comped him to the other day, he's in a similar mold of that. And guess what? When you're an offense that wants to feed you the ball and you can just be smart and savvy, that can be enough. But I just get worried about someone like Emeka, who I don't think has one truly elite skill, all of a sudden putting that fear into defenses. So again, at this point, the volume's there. He's only got Evans as target competition, and I'm not too worried about it at this point for 2025. But man, once Godwin is back and healthy, presumably just signed the big deal and everything, and if Baker isn't going to be exactly leading the league in passing touchdowns, I do wonder if Emeka could be more of a good versus great, sort of player long-term. But again, maybe he's just still on that same sort of plane with these other wide receivers that I mentioned and everything's fine and I'm overthinking it. But do you get that vibe a little bit? Again, I think he's a jack of all trades, master of none. And I think at the NFL level, man, it helps a lot if you can have that, one true elite trait to fall back on.
It's interesting. That's a great take. By the way, I'm going to speak to your, he is probably the 5th best, Ohio State wide receiver. I think I sent it to you, our UN score wide receiver model, which is just fun. It's not a ranking, it's a model. It's just a number, but it's fun to look at. And so, Marvin Harrison, number 4 on that list. This is from 18 to 25, 2018 to 25. So he's number 4. Olave's number 7. JSN's number 6. Emeka's number 10 and Garrett Wilson's 13. So I'm with you. Yeah, it's not like he is the number 1 player out of that group, but those are top 10 players out of the last,
that's the thing.
7 years. So, and I think Jeremiah Smith is going to challenge for the number 1 spot when it's all said and done. I mean, this kid has been unbelievable, even, by the eye test, but also by the numbers. So, we're not going to be tricked by any models. The model's going to capture that dude. But so I do think there's something there in terms of the jack of all trades, master of none. I think we get a little too enamored, and I'll tell you one thing that's not in the model at all is any size or any athletic measurements, because it doesn't really tend to matter at the wide receiver position. It's not something. Look, there's disqualifiers and there's things that make you a little bit better, but those things are captured in other ways. Specifically, draft capital captures it. If you run slow, you're probably going to go late in the draft. So that's going to be sort of counted twice if you count draft capital in a model or whatever. So I think that's part of it. I think he's plenty an athlete, and I do think he's a lot like JSN. And we talk about it all the time now, and I know you know this, that the number 1 queen chess piece on the board is the slot receiver who doesn't come off the field in 2 wide receiver sets. That's how Cooper Kupp got his Triple Crown. That's how Jamar Chase got there last year too. They moved him in the slot more than they had ever done in the past so that he could get a lot of better matchups and more targets, middle of the field targets, which tend to be more open now with the 2 high and no more 1 high where you can take it deep down the sideline, etc. So all these things, that's where CeeDee Lamb plays. That's where all the best players tend to play. Malik Neighbors moves all over the place and they get him the easy catches. CD. That's what hurt. Yeah, CD, dude, absolutely. And I think that's where JSN is moving to this year. And I think that's where I expected Egbuka to move potentially over the coming years after Godwin and Evans left. But with Godwin's vacated, it could be that Egbuka has that role in year 1. That's wishful thinking to some degree, but I actually thought that Egbuka was more like the CeeDee Lamb JSN, where he'd find his way into the NFL through the slot and then grow from there. But it's looking like, as you point out, he's going to play more outside and do that queen chess piece stuff, which gets me very excited.
It's just, for Egbuka, someone that started his career was returning some kicks, and he was just really being hyped up. And he is fast, obviously. He's a 4.4 guy. I get it. But you just watch him, and a lot of those touchdowns down the seam, had a linebacker right there in his hip pocket, trailing. And just there wasn't a ton of shiftiness, man. He only got credited with 10 forced missed tackles all of last season. I mean, Xavier Legette had 9. Rookie Pearsall had 9 in there last year. It's like Tedero McMillan had 29. Travis Hunter had 24. Even Luther Burden had 30 last season. So, different uses and stuff like that. But just for someone like Emeka, who is, supposed to be this kind of shifty slot maybe, I think the JSN comp does make some sense because, again, even if, you want to accuse us of helmet scouting and all that, JSN hasn't always been like the most shifty, yards after the catch guy. He can do it, and he has, a couple flashes here or there with it. But, it's one of those things too, man, where as much as I do love JSN, like even watching him back last year, I was a lot more instances of me being like, man, what a freaking throw, Gino, than necessarily being like, oh, look at all that separation from Jackson. But again, I'm probably overthinking it to an extent. At the end of the day, first round draft capital. And, there are only so many Jamar Chases and Malik Neighbors of the world. So, we see plenty, even Cooper Kupp, where Triple Crown season, again, that was just the peak of his powers and everything that. But over the course of his career, like I never thought he was better straight up than Devontae Adams. Now, it didn't matter in fantasy because he was the best guy that they had in that offense to throw to. So you don't have to
even on the top.
Even Amon-Ra, same
right?
thing. And
nobody accuses him of being some sort of athletic, gifted break tackle guy. Right. I mean, he's a route running savant who's open and available and PPR machine.
Like I remember talking to Matt Kelly, shout out a couple years ago, and I think it was like 2021 or 2022, and I was like, I think Amari Cooper's a better wide receiver than Amon-Ra, but in Amon-Ra's offense and the way they use him right now, like I thought Amari could do what Amon-Ra was doing, but I didn't think you could necessarily swap their roles. But guess what? It doesn't freaking matter. We're trying to chase
Doesn't matter.
these fantasy points. So I'm not trying to put down Amon-Ra, but I think he's closer to the wide receiver 10 in the NFL than the wide receiver
Agree.
one. But guess what? You don't have to necessarily be even a top 5 or even a top 10 receiver to be one in fantasy land.
You could argue with me and say that T. Higgins is a better quote unquote wide receiver than Amon-Ra. And I'd be like, yeah, maybe that's true, but that doesn't matter when we're drafting fantasy teams. Like,
Right.
if we're having a football conversation, dude, let's have it. That sounds like fun. Let's have a football conversation. But unfortunately, we're making money on the streets here, pal. We got to figure out who's going to get a lot of targets, and targets are
Yep.
earned. And it's first of all, also huge data point. Baker is glossing your boy. I mean, he loves him some Ibuka.
He is. He threw him the Amon-Ra comp. And again, Baker's someone who obviously has been playing a very, very good football over the course of these past 2 years. So, again, it's one of those things where I was ready to more so I had Emeka who's closer to that wide receiver 4 line for a lot of the offseason. But the way everything's setting up now with the targets, I mean, we saw what Chris Godwin did last year. That's another example where, yes, Godwin's a really good receiver, but I don't think he was playing like the second best wide receiver behind Jamar Chase.
Right.
He was in fantasy points, but again, that's a part of the system that, again, we could hopefully see go Ibuka's way. So I will say, man, more and more, I know this is more a redraft, but like you get into that wide receiver 2 tier of guys right now. And after, I would say, A.J. Brown, McConkey, and Higgins, like it's a little bit of a drop off. And so when I'm in round 3, round 4, I've been more willing to take the elite quarterback or tight end, or maybe, the Travion Henderson running back that you just got your eye on. But out of that whole tier of old 30-something wide receivers or stud young Buckeyes or quarterback questions, like I wonder if Mike Evans is just the answer there, man. Because like haven't seen his play drop off at all. He's getting a little bit longer in the tooth, obviously, but is a situation where he's gonna get a lot of those targets too. And I just think we could look up in week 4 or week 5 and be like, yeah, Mike Evans, top 3 wide receiver right now.
Absolutely.
So dude's still separating. And again, he's averaged more fantasy points per game with Baker than he even did with Tom Brady out there during those 3 years. So shout out Big Mike Evans too. Can't forget about him in Tampa.
Dude, totally. I mean, not forgetting about him, certainly just talking about Ibuka in this situation. But what about, let's talk some running backs. We're going to group them all together. I guess if we're going to talk rookie running backs and their efficacy, we can't start anywhere but with Bill. The field, Mr. Cross Rocket himself, Jacory Croskey-Merritt. What's most likely here? That's what I want to know. What's most likely?
I think most likely is he's the lead early down back in a really good offense, and he returns touchdown dependent RB2, RB3 value. What I hope doesn't happen though, is that I hope he doesn't become stuck as this in between the 20s guy where Chris Rodriguez or even Austin Eckler gets those goal line touches. So again, huge jump in the ranks. But right now I have him as RB31 going to the season. He's right there with Tyrone Tracy, Caleb Johnson, and some of these other guys. So that's a huge ranking bump. So I don't want to be like down on the guy. And if you can get him in round 8 or 9, some of these drafts, I think that's fine. But bro, I've been in some of these redraft leagues where they're, chasing him up in the round 5. I had someone offer trying to give me Bill and like something else for like a first round pick in Dynasty. I'm like, come on. Like it's just one of those trade offers where you're like, really? Like you think this little of me right now to send that? Yeah. So a little bit insulting trade offer aside. Great story. I get the whole shenanigans, and just shows how useless of an organization the NCAA is that the dude changed his number at Alabama State and they had to question the red shirt stuff. So seems like a great dude. And the fact that he stayed with the Arizona football program throughout all that, when I probably would have bounced. I mean, what the hell are we doing here? Like that's hard work doing that, and you can't even play. So again, great story and everything. But yeah, to the original point, I think the most likely thing is more so this touchdown dependent, RB24, RB25-ish. And that's usually not an archetype I'm going out of my way for.
Yeah, obviously, injuries can happen, things can happen. Obviously, Eckler gets hurt or something, then everything sort of shuffles and things change, and who knows what happens. And pass game, maybe it's him, maybe it's not, maybe it's someone else that we're not even thinking about, not Chris Rodriguez. But if everybody's healthy, going out in the field week 1, Eckler's getting all the 2-minute, 4-minute comeback, hurry up, late quarter, right? He might even get goal line because I don't know if you saw it, but he's the only one who could jump over all the bags without knocking one over.
Bro, Eckler could do that too. And
He
honestly, I
has, I
know
know.
last year, like for good reasons, Saquon, Henry, and Jacobs were getting all the, oh, look at them changing teams and being in this new environment and looking like their old selves. Eckler really was making the most out of his opportunities, man. Rusher and receiver, and even that kick return touchdown got called back. So the concussions unfortunately robbed him of playing a little bit more often. But I think Eckler is going to be very involved, man. Honestly, he's someone where he's a good late round dart, particularly for your
That's the
zero
value.
RB builds, because man, no, he's not going to, he's never been this 20 plus carry per game guy. We don't need that. But if we get 12 to 15 combined carries and targets per week in that offense, man, that can go a long way, especially if we do happen to somehow get those goal line touches like you're talking about.
Yeah. And Ian, I love this. I'm having so much fun, by the way. I know you got to get going pretty soon. We'll do that soon. Thank you so much. But I will say, like, the builds that people have, like when you talk about redraft, it's always like, okay, maybe there's not a build where I'm not excited to take Eckler because he doesn't pose value, because I already have, other running backs. He doesn't have the upside. I'd rather take upside swings late in the draft. All that makes sense. But in Dynasty, you're looking for value to either give you production or future, increased value. And production is what you're looking for. And sometimes an RB2 that can just kind of get you there when you've got a loaded roster in other ways. Eckler, I think, is that type of player because he's not going to be expensive. He's overlooked because of the Bill situation. I've been trying to find Ecklers here and there in a few of my leagues. So yeah, I think Eckler's a great RB2. Slot him in if you're sort of a hero running back build in Dynasty.
That's what Dwayne McFarland and I were talking about. We're doing a real-time sports redraft high-stakes league last night, and ended up going hero, Travion, so super hendo build, basically going with that. Had all these sick wide receivers. We got Jalen Hurts, and we got to round 7, and like Rome Odunze was on the board, and we wanted him, but so was David Montgomery. And what we were saying was like, we got to eat our vegetables at some point. You need to give yourself a chance. You can't just continue ignoring, a legit starting spot like your RB2, even if it's not the most sexy thing in the world. So again, I get it. You want your upside, and I would prefer to build
you went Monty?
Yeah, we ended up going Monty. It was like round 7 or round 8. And again, in these streets, DeAndre Swift went round 4. Like I think Zach Charbonnet went before Monty. So at that, I'm not even like the biggest Monty guy, but at that price, in that build, it made more sense. So ideally, I think the best way of balancing it this year is trying to get 2 RBs in the first 4. But we had our reasons for going more with the wide receivers. So I will say again, if you guys are trying to get in the redraft streets, so like the big pocket that I love is those rounds 5 through 8 or 9 wide receivers, because I just think again, once you get past the first 12 or 13, it becomes this extended tier. And you were even saying earlier, like, some of you have player X ranked here, but wouldn't disagree with moving them up or down a little bit with it. Like that's how I feel with that wide receiver 2 to even 3 tier. So the more I can just get multiple darts there, man, versus some of these, quote unquote dead zone running backs when possible. Right. That's my preferred way of doing it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Dude, I had to loosen my pants just a little bit because you said you went hero RB with Travion Henderson. Look, Travion Henderson was also one of my guys going into this draft. So I'm running pure this draft season so far without a game yet played. So I really don't. I'm ready for it all to crash against the rocks when Travion gets 4 carries and 2 targets in week 1. No, listen, this would hurt me more than it would hurt you, even though it's a high stakes league. I got all the dynasty money on Trev as well. But anyway, you mentioned here in the dynasty streets, we talk about obviously Genty, Bijan, and Gibbs as being the 1, 2, 3 running backs in dynasty. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. I obviously got to put Bill in there somewhere, but after Bill, RB4, joking, but in that RB4, I've got right now Trev and Omarion. I do have Travion Henderson right ahead of him. I'm fine either way. If we were running a team and you told me you prefer Omarion, I'd go with you. I'm okay. I'm not, no hate. I love them both. I just think the pass game upside and the role that Travion projects to play is about as safe found money as you can get in these fantasy streets. So I'm there. Are you there with me for 5? In other words, would you take any other running back in the world over Travion or Omarion in Dynasty? And are you okay with me with Travion over Omarion in Dynasty?
I think it's Genty Hampton, Travion, everyone else. And if you want to put Travion ahead of Hampton, just more so for what you were saying, that full PPR potential upside, I totally get it, man. Because again, we've seen it from the A-Chance, the Camaras to the Ecklers, like we were just talking about. I mean, you don't need to be this 300 carry bell cow to succeed in full PPR fantasy. And Travion, man, just based on what we've seen him do, just as an explosive pass catching talent, like I really feel like that part of his game wasn't even fully tapped into at Ohio State, because we just talked about all the wide receivers they have. But dude, like there were just random moments where it seemed like they were almost just trying to do these guys like solids to put stuff on film. I think they were playing Purdue, kicking the dog shit out of them. And like early fourth quarter, though, you see Travion split out running a sluggo as a wide receiver and just catching one downfield for 40 yards. So it's been almost laughable how often Patriots beats talking about, oh, there's another wheel route to Hendo downfield, making a big play with it. So again, the big play ability is huge. And just I've more so jumped on the hype train just upon fully realizing that we could be looking at, again, not 300 carries. I think Ramondre probably should be projected for more carries this year, but in that 150, 175 range. And then though, I really think we could see him separate as a receiver. So the 2 targets in week 1 thing you threw around, that scares me a little bit. I would like to think it's going to be closer to 5 or 6, but we really just don't see running backs that are able to push for 60, 70 targets, bust in a meaningful way in fantasy land. God forbid ones that can make the most out of it, like Travion. So it was good to see at the risk of putting too much into what happened in the preseason. I was just kind of happy to see Drake May being willing to check the ball down, because he's such a scrambler and willing to run. That is the concern, but it's not always like Justin Fields is one of these scrambling quarterbacks who also throws to his running backs more than you'd expect. So it's one of those things to kind of, as much as scrambling quarterbacks are generally bad for their running backs, it's not like a one-size-fits-all sort of situation. So I believe in Drake May and I believe in Hendo. And, I took Hampton over Hendo in my Dynasty draft. But I'll tell you what, man, I don't have like the strongest conviction about it.
Yeah. I think certainly he was going at the 102 was Hampton the whole way. And, I got all my Travion Henderson bags at 105, 106, 107 in rookie drafts. The 107s felt really good. I was like, wow, this is splendid. But nonetheless, getting him in that zone was where he was. I think where he is now is side by side holding hands with Omari. And you mentioned the checkdowns. Look, I think he's going to be utilized more as a weapon, as you started to mention, which the wheel routes, all these different option routes, the way that he can kind of get out there and leverage these linebackers and just put them in fear, right? I mean, if all of a sudden there's some motion, next thing you know, you're the linebacker and you look up, you're like, oh no, it looks like I'm one-on-one with Travion Henderson. That's not optimal. So I think they're going to do that. Also, if we look at Josh McDaniels' history, he's always had a player like this, whether it was, I don't even know if he was there for Kevin Falk. I'm going way back, but Kevin Falk, Shane Vereen, Danny Woodhead, all these players, right? Oh, James White, of course, the more prominently named one, but all these guys were that role, and some of them had a little bit more to it, but Travion is the one that has a lot more to it. He can be a goal line player. He can be, he can take on 10, 15 rushes a game. I do think that's optimal, 10 plus-ish carries per game. And then sort of all that pass game stuff that comes from either being schemed in, which do remember, what are their options? They've got like Hunter Henry. Okay, that's fine. Diggs is good. But after that, it's like they don't exactly have target earners all over the place. So I think they're going to look to scheme Travion into some of these spots. And I think the ceiling is absolutely huge in the pass game.
And again, it's one of those things where I think we all love the landing spot for RJ Harvey in terms of being with Peyton and a coach that obviously knows how to get the most out of his running backs in the passing game. But second best, you could argue, is Josh McDaniels. And not that he is responsible for everything that Brady was doing with some of those guys you mentioned over the years. But, he was at least somewhat, for getting these guys involved and again, having those sort of rotations. So I do, because as much as McDaniels did feature Josh Jacobs with the Raiders, man, you're old enough to know, like me, we have seen some walkiness in New England over the years. So I think the concern, it's 2025. All of these backfields are pretty much every single one is a committee of some shape or size. We can live with Mondre and Travion, doing their thing, 1A, 1B, however you want to slice it. But I just hope we're not sitting here after week 1 looking at like a 40, 35, 25 split with Antonio Gibson throwing his hat into that ring, because, hey, man, I've been
Stop it.
I've been joking, and you were saying you support Gibson too, so I appreciate that. And been joking about him being the Cowboys RB1 or this or that. But Gibson,
He
man,
would be.
as much as you want to hate, as much as people want to hate on this guy, and I know the ball security has been an issue over the years, which made it kind of funny
Yeah.
that he was getting the chance over Mondre last year when they were kind of doghousing him. But Gibson's advanced numbers last year were every bit as good as guys like Bucky Irving, but it's Antonio Gibson. So people have been setting their, touch threshold high enough to not include Gibby. But man, he is still this bigger, plus size guy with pass catching ability. So it's just, my worry is that we have that involved, because there were years too, man, where like Brandon Bolden was still getting a little more use than we expected. Yeah. So that's my one concern, but ultimately hasn't been enough for me to shy away from Hendo, even in parts of round 3.
Yeah, no, that you're scaring me a little bit. I'm not going to lie, but I'm okay. I'm going to be all right.
Right.
I want to just finish in, we talked about Amari, and I think Amari, and let's finish with the Chargers.
Huge
Go
news.
ahead, please. What happened?
Kelsey and T Swift got engaged.
Wow.
Yeah. So, sorry.
See, here's the thing. I thought maybe he was going to do it. I suggested that he should have proposed to her when they won the Super Bowl, right on the field, the whole thing, but all right, fine.
Maybe that was his plan last year.
This is great. I'm not, just so you know, so this is my take. And my take's been this, as what are we, the jocks, we're the, there's the actors, the music artists, there's the, billionaires, there's all different types of, we're just the jocks. That's who we are. I want the jock to land the queen, the Taylor Swift, the biggest icon of our time.
Well, think about how many girls and women have become Think about how many girls and women have become interested in football now, thanks to this whole thing going on. So I'm with you. I wish, and they've done a better job on broadcast. Like, just show them once or twice. I like seeing the celebrities that are at the game. Like, that's cool. I just don't need it after every freaking catch.
No, it's obviously of course no, but that's blaming the broadcast, not.
Oh yeah,
Travis. He's just, his girlfriend's at the game. Like, what do you want to do? Be like, don't come? No, they're having fun. They're high fiving. She's hanging with his mom. Like, this, there's nothing but purity here. I mean, this is the greatest thing. I absolutely love it. So, it's so hard to imagine being a multi-billion-dollar. That's like, nobody gets it. Nobody understands. This is ridiculous. So that's great. There we go. Travis Kelce, little baby Kelce's. My daughter's going to be so pleased. This is great. Getting back to the Chargers somehow after following that up. I just am curious about what you think the Keenan Allen effect is there, if at all. And in other words, what are your thoughts about Ladd? I know that a lot of people are down on Ladd because of Keenan Allen and other things like, their projected pass volume, things of that nature. What are your thoughts here and just in general in Chargers?
Yeah, I mean, well, the Najee thing's interesting, man, because their GM actually was saying on the broadcast that Najee's doing better, and he thought he could be there for week 1. So I do think the plan here was for something close to an evenly split backfield. As much as I think Hampton wins out and he could be the guy you want more in December, obviously, and I've drafted a lot of Hampton, Matthew Berry's ride or die for this year. I mean, Najee, the things we kind of hold against him, man, I don't think we do for every running back. Like the whole, he's never had a career rush over 40 yards. Yeah, neither is Bijan Robinson. So are you guys not going to draft him 101 or 102 now? So, and even like the long speed, man, like he's actually managed to have some pretty sweet plays. If anything, he's almost got that James Conner in him where they're not quite as good success rate wise as you would expect. You pull up the explosive run numbers, and I think they're actually a little bit more surprising. So Najee, it's not like Pittsburgh has just been this, offense where you could expect to get the most out of your running backs in recent years as well. So, just end up becoming like a little bit of a Najee defender because of how people just act like he's so horrible. Because again, man, it's him and Swift. Like, I get it. Their vision is not great, but those are the only two running backs like we hold that against. So instead of it being this, like, again, 3 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 vision, we act like everyone else is a 10 out of 10 at the position. So I think Najee, even though he didn't get a complete bag in free agency, man, look at OC Greg Roman, man. He watched rookie year J.K. Dobbins average 6 yards per carry and still found a way to feed Gus Edwards and Mark Ingram more total carries. So it's a situation where I do think we'll see multiple running backs. Now, he actually referenced Roman was saying recently, like, we're always going to keep multiple guys involved. That was true last year, and J.K. Dobbins still had like a 300-plus touch pace if he was able to stay healthy for all 17 games. So I do think that'll be Hampton. Again, even if he's not going to be vying for 400 touches like all of us selfish fantasy managers would want, I think it'll still be more than enough. But hey, man, if you guys are in these redraft streets and like we don't get clear word on Najee yet, man, he's going outside like a top 150 picks. I think he's very similar to Ramondre Stevenson, who we just talked about,
Agree.
continuing to be a part. And God forbid something happens to one of these rookies, man. Like they're going to be guys that get enough volume to help out.
Before the July 4th shenanigans, I was arguing that I thought Najee would take more away from Omarion than Ramondre would take away from Travion, which was part of the reason I was like, I think Travion's close enough to Omarion. And then factor in the pass catching profile of Travion. But also one other concern for Omarion right now is that there's also this offensive coordinator, head coach, and even quarterback to some degree do not target the running back at all. Now, I know that you could make the argument that there hasn't been a running back target in there, but you could also argue that Omarion's not necessarily a target hog running back as well as the potential split. By the way, if you had a trivia and said which running back in the last 4 years is the only running back with plus 1,000 yards of rushing in the 4 straight years, not many people are guessing Najee Harris. I'm not sure if he's the only one, but he did crest 1,000 yards of. Yeah, he probably is. I don't think there is another one now that I'm trying to think of it, but he's the only one.
JT, I think JT had that injured year. Yeah, no, JT's just been a little bit too banged up. Same with Henry, probably.
Oh, Henry probably. Yeah. There you go.
No, because in 2021, they only played 8 games. He missed it by 63 yards.
There you go.
And again, Najee hasn't missed a game, so it's one of those, counting stats that's a little bit flawed. But
of course, it's a counting stat. Of course, yeah.
Right.
But it's 17 games a year, every year.
Remember Najee coming out, bro? Some of those highlights, just the hurdles he was hitting and like the big plays and receiving. I mean, not trying to say Najee's a top 10 running back, but I think it'd be tough to name more than like 25 or 30 better than him. Now he's in a committee in Los Angeles, so is that such a bad thing?
No, I think if Najee's okay to play, it really hurts Omarion. I thought, going in, I thought it was going to be Najee would get the veteran deference up front, and then Omarion would sort of wrestle the job away from him and get to a probably 60-40 split in favor of Omarion late. Obviously, with the injury, I think Omarion's probably worked himself into that role sooner rather than later. But I still think as soon as and when Najee is healthy and good to go, he's going to be a thorn in the fantasy side of Omarion,
Yeah. No, man, I hear you. So
all right, man.
We'll see how it goes down. I think the Chargers, again, more so just hoping Lab McConkey keeps on balling out. That's another one that's kind of confused me because people are like, I've heard people say, McConkey probably reached the ceiling. I don't know, dude. Shout out to formerly PFF, now he's at CBS, Mike Renner, one of the best draft analysts in the game, in my opinion. But he said it from the beginning, man, that he was getting just honestly like Antonio vibes from Lab McConkey, even coming out of Georgia. And I saw the same freaking thing last year. And that is incredibly high praise because for my money's worth, even as great as Julio was, man, AB to me is the wide receiver 1 of the 2010s. If you want to include Megatron in that, then okay, I'll probably have to give him that hat tip. But either way, man, 2013 to 2017 AB, that run is unlike pretty much anything we've seen since, Moss or Marv or even Jerry freaking Rice out here. So just the way Ladd is capable of winning at the catch point and just honestly the routes and ability to move in space, man, it really is special. So can't quite think why people maybe think he maxed out a little bit there, but
I think it could be the lunch pail. The fact that he brings his lunch pail to work, that's probably
real gritty guy, sneaky real athletic gritty. Out there, right?
Sneaky athletic. That's right. I think
man, Lab McConkey. That's why again, dude. Like, if you get McConkey in round 3, man, freaking smash that. I'll figure out my running back room later if I have a chance after that. More times than that. I really do think it's AJB, McConkey, and I would include T. Higgins in there. Like after that, once we start getting to the Tyreeks, the Marvs, the Garrett Wilsons, like that's where I have a bit more of a problem.
Yeah, I think Ladd's a stud. We absolutely love him. Dude, this was so much fun. I love listening to you and Dwayne. I really do.
Thanks,
I love your show. I tune in all the time. So thank you so much for being here. Any parting shots? You want to say hi to Ms. Odunze, Travis Seal, anybody? You say hi to anybody. Say what you want to say. Plug your stuff. Do plug your stuff. I'm telling you, I listen to your show all the time. So I love it. So you and Dwayne, I got to get Dwayne on here. My goal is to
Yeah.
have Dwayne on like week 3 or 4 or something like that when I can talk to him about the utilization, because his utilization report is the best in the business, an absolute gift to us fantasy gamers. So thanks again.
Sure is. If you guys want that utilization goodness, invite you to check out fantasylife.com. You can even use code Ian for 20% off if you're into that kind of thing. Otherwise, we got articles and the shows and all that for free. So totally get it. But yeah, Fantasy Life show Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Dwayne and I are going to be back in the Sunday night recap streets as well. So make sure you check that out. Just trying to be, your one-stop shop for all things fantasy. Hopefully have a little bit of fun along the way. But no, man, it's good talking to you. I love my Dynasty leagues. And I'm, one of the drawbacks I would say of being in this like 25 managed leagues every year is I don't make enough time to just completely like go out on the trade streets, because I got to pretend to be, a loving husband at some point in my life. So it is a situation though in Dynasty where I love, kind of getting ready for the draft and kind of getting into that trade mode a little bit more in the off season. So fun, and I certainly appreciate the grind that you and everyone else has.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. And on behalf of everybody here at the Undroppables, on behalf of everybody here at the Undrafted, on behalf of the greatest podcast producer to ever walk the land, Mr. Michael P. Duncan.
Woo!
You have been joined by the Twitter king, Mr. Ian Hartitz. I am Jax Falcone, and we are out.